Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this cantoral session in our Edgware United Synagogue Adult Education Programme. We work in association with the European Cantors Association, and tonight's presentation is from one of the ECA's regular contributors, David Prager, who is a leading member of that organisation. His topic is the amazing survival and career of cantor Samuel B. Taube. David R. Prager was born in Manchester. He has studied the music and biographies of the cantors of the 20th and 21st centuries. He is in demand as an accompanist at cantoral concerts due to his ability to play all the most famous cantoral compositions in a key appropriate to the voice of the soloist. A chemist by profession, he pursued a prestigious senior management career and pension fund chairmanship in multinational corporations. He lives with his wife Jill in Surbiton. At the end of the presentation, you will have an opportunity to comment and ask questions.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share the screen, but I think probably before we start, Alex Klein would like to say a few words. So, Alex, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, good evening. I'm very much looking forward to this presentation by David. And I just want to explain this presentation came about through the archives of cousin Pinchas Fagenblum, and because of some boxes and some recordings that were found and were given to us, we now research even more. So what I would like to say to everybody here, if you are clearing family houses that have recordings or tapes, please don't throw them out, because there could be some very, very valuable information stored and valuable tapes. So it is very, very important to keep the archive. And through people like David Prager and myself, the ECA, we are continuing to do this and to preserve the wonderful music of our past, which is our history. Have a lovely evening and enjoy.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go straight to a screen share of the presentation. First of all, welcome to the Taube family from around the world. Welcome to distinguished cantorial aficionados also from around the world. I see faces on the screen from Vancouver, from Jerusalem, other parts of Israel, other parts of the UK. So welcome one and all. I'm going to share the screen now. Okay, let us start with a question. Who was Cantor Samuel B. Taube? Or even more correctly, Cantor Samuel B. Taube? What is his remarkable biography? And what were the personal connections to bring his rare recordings to light? So let us fire away and go straight into the detail. His father was Israel Taube, his mother was Gila Taube, née Meirantz. His siblings were Thea, Eli, and Michael. His wife was Yehudit, née Aufrichtig or Arato. His children are Yaakov, Yona, and Ruchi. So, where was he born? He was born in Zelov, Poland, which is near Lodz, in 1914. Yona tells me that around 1920-ish, the father went to explore making a livelihood in Palestine, Eretz Israel. And he was there for some time, but decided it was not possible for him to make sufficient of a living. And he returned, but he couldn't get back into Poland, and therefore moved the family to the Shiva Kehillas, the 7 communities, one of which is Lachenbach, near Vienna in Austria, between Vienna and Pressburg, today's Bratislava, where there were famous old communities. And one of the towns was Mattersdorf, which had a famous yeshiva, and young Shmuel Baruch went to yeshiva in Mattersdorf. And it was apparent from an early age that I think it's not an exaggeration to say that he was a musical genius. You will hear later on some recollections, I'm sure, from people who knew him in that regard. Anyway, he decided to pursue a career in Chazanot, and nearby in Vienna was Emanuel Frenkel, the distinguished cantorial teacher, and also Yehuda Leib Miller, an equally famous cantorial teacher in Vienna. And he studied there, but actually he didn't have to study too much there, because after a short while, he probably knew close to as much as his teachers. And he was able to get a minor job at the Montefiore Bethaus in Vienna in 1935. However, this wasn't the greatest of cantorial posts. And in 1937, an opportunity came up in Paris at the Synagogue de la Rue de Montevideo in Paris. And he applied for the job and he got it. And in a way, this was going to be a lifesaver for the family later on. So here we are, Paris, late 1930s. And in 1938, the Nazis take over Austria with the Anschluss. And one of the first activities of the Nazis in Austria was to make the Shiva Kahillas Judenrein, so that if you happened to be living in that area, you were exiled to Vienna. And this was the case with the Taube family. And cousin Taube's father apparently was arrested and beaten up by the Nazis at that time. And luckily, the family was able to join their son in Paris. And so that was the case with the family, mainly gathered in Paris, except the youngest son was young enough to qualify for the Kindertransport, and he was able to get to England, to Manchester. So cousin Taube and his sister and his brother, two brothers, were in Paris. Youngest brother was in Manchester. Father and mother were in Paris. But as war started in 1939, and later on, anti-Semitic measures were enacted in Paris and roundups were occurring in Paris, the rest of the family in France decided to go into the southern zone, where there was a better chance of survival, whereas Shmuel Baruch remained in Paris because he had a job there. However, the situation got hotter in 1942, and he decided to escape to the south. And he did this on a truck hidden under rolls of paper, I guess, large newsprint rolls. And once he got into the southern zone, he was reunited with the rest of the family. And you see an amazing picture here, which was in the Feigenblum archive. So a quick shout out to Moshe Feigenblum, who preserved this picture since it was taken and given to his father and preserved in boxes in London for decades. Anyway, smiling from the center of the photo is none other than the remarkably famous operatic singer Joseph Schmidt. I think I might try and zoom into that picture so you can see it better. This is an unmistakable face of Joseph Schmidt. And if you were in any doubt, Chazan Feigenblum's writing at the bottom of the page tells you this is August 1942 in the Auvergne in France, La Bourboule, and it's noted that one of the last occasions when Joseph Schmidt sang was there, because 3 months later he was dead when he had got into Switzerland and into an internment camp when he became ill and died suddenly, still in his 30s. If anybody watching knows who Cantor Dobrin is, please let me know. I suppose we should say there's a prize for whoever finds out who he is. Next to Schmidt, on the opposite side, is the unmistakable face of the young Cantor Schmalborough Taube. And the gentleman on the right-hand side of the picture, we don't know who he is. And the gentleman on the left-hand side of the picture, we also don't know. But shortly after this, as we know, poor old Joseph Schmidt was no longer in the land of the living. Comes October 1943 in the south of France. In a random arrest on the street, Schmalborough Taube found himself detained because he was confused at that moment as to what to say for the best. His papers were not completely in order, and he was asked where he lived, but he didn't want to give his parents' and family's address away, and his answers weren't satisfactorily quick and accurate, and he found himself in Chambéry prison, and next stop was the deportation center near to Paris of Drancy. And in most cases, next stop after Drancy would be Auschwitz. And in fact, this was the case. And if you look for deportation lists in November 1943, you will find Schmuel Taube on the train. And in this train, he met, also Polish-born, also living in France, the violinist Ignaz Speiser, and they spent the days discussing music on the way to Auschwitz. And that's important for later on. In a block of 900 people in Auschwitz, with numbers tattooed on their arms, etc., one day, 700 of these people were selected for the gas chambers. And he said to Ignaz Speiser, listen, if we stay here, this will also be our fate. And there was a request at that time for volunteers, or people who were willing to put themselves forward for the coal mines subcamp of Auschwitz at Fürstengrube, which is, I think, about 30 kilometers away. Because at this time, as a chemist, I can now speak a different subject. The Nazis were trying to run a war without access to rubber and without access to petrol. And that's not an easy thing to do. On the other hand, there exists chemical technology to convert coal into rubber, Buna rubber, and there exists technology to convert coal into fuel. And the Nazis pursued both of these options, and at Auschwitz 3 was in fact an IG Farben factory to make rubber from coal. Anyway, having been there from the end of 1943 and witnessing this large selection, we find Chazen Taube in January 1944 arriving at Fürstengrube. And a remarkable thing happened at that moment. The block elder called out, "Who is here a singer?" And many people put their hands up, but not Cantor Taube. And the block elder was not impressed with this large number of potential singers, and he ignored them all and said, "The man who can sing is this fellow over here. Come with me." And he was brought to the presence next to the kitchen of Camp Commandant Otto Moll. If one looks up in the Holocaust history, who is Otto Moll? He is a notorious murderer, and later on he was posted to the crematoria at Auschwitz itself and had no compunction in throwing people alive into the flames and what have you. He was apparently brain injured earlier on, and that made him absolutely dispassionate. However, he liked music, and he wanted entertaining. And Chazen Taube was brought forward as the singer, and he rescued Ignaz Speiser, the violinist, at this moment. He said, "I need an accompanist," and there were plenty of violins available in this concentration camp, subcamp coal mine, and Speiser was given a was allowed to choose a violin, tune it, and the two of them then performed You Are My Heart's Delight for Otto Moll, who was pleased with it and said to the block elder, make sure nothing happens to these two. Because let me explain, the situation in the camp was that if you're a Polish coal miner with regular equipment, you could survive reasonably well. If you're a Jewish slave worker, you could not survive really well for very long at all, because you wouldn't have been given protective equipment, and your fate would be not to survive very long at all. However, in the kitchen, and the kitchen in this subcamp was the same kitchen for the SS, as well as the Polish workers, as well as the slave laborers. And being in the kitchen and having to survive, we know now, until the death marches started in January of 1945. So we're in January 44, one has to survive a year in Auschwitz, and maybe the least worst place to survive that is in kitchen duties in the subcamp of Fürstengruber. So both Ignaz Spicer and Shmuel Baruch Taube did survive. And on the top right-hand side, you'll see a picture at the end of the war of survivors of the death march. And this death march took 3 months. January, February, and March of 1945, well, going into a fourth month, April. And by the end of April, Count Bernadotte had done his white buses deal with the Germans for the freeing of Western concentration camp victims to Sweden. And Taube and Ignaz Spicer both found themselves on the white buses at the end of the war to Sweden. I didn't mention the details of the death march, but the successor of Otto Moll as commandant of Fürstengruber was a less vicious type, rejoicing in the name Schmidt, whose father was a farmer in the north of Germany, near Schleswig-Holstein, and he had maintained his group of, I think it was 500 people, on the death march from Fürstengruber over the 4 months via Mauthausen, where they were not really let in for very long because it was pretty full and in a terrible state. Then Dora Mittelbau, the famous rocket factory under the mountain, and then towards the final stop in the north near the father's farm, the Schmidt father's farm. And it was from there that they got the white buses, and there they were liberated to Sweden. And that picture, I think, is on arrival in Sweden rather than departing from Germany. So they were already free then. What happened after the war? In Sweden, he made contact with the Gothenburg Jewish community who were looking for a chazan, and he becomes Cantor in Gothenburg, 1945-1946. He meets a young lady from Hungary who had been in Holland before the war, and therefore was also a white bus candidate, being a Western concentration camp victim. And they were married in Sweden. In 1947, he returned to Paris, where eldest son Yaakov, who is present with us tonight, welcome Yaakov, was born. Sorry, we've given away your age. Anyway, I've got a picture from British Pathé News that I'm going to flip to now, because having seen this remarkable film, I wondered, first of all, what it was at. And then I looked in the Jewish Chronicle Archive, and I found that in 1948, the French celebrated Israel's independence with a gathering, a huge gathering of tens of thousands of people at the same Velodrome d'Hiver where they had rounded up Jews to take them into captivity just a few years before. And some people turned up for this Israel independence ceremony in the striped pajamas of their concentration camp uniform. Part of this has got sound, part of it hasn't got sound. Film from 1948 is already a little bit old, but this is what is available to be seen on the British Pathé website. So the top brass of France is there, up to the government level, and French community members, top rabbis. And in a minute you'll hear somebody in concentration camp uniform, El Rachamim from Chazan Taube. So that's 1948. Let's go back to his time in France. He records 2 78s with Oratorio de Paris Choir, and we're going to hear Zohar Tiloch by Lewandowski, with Chazan Taube showing us his slight composing powers now, where he goes up to a top B with no difficulty at all towards the beginning, and shows us how easy it is for him. Very good. Marvelous choir, marvelous soloist. So, if one watches his Holocaust testimony film, he mentions the return to Paris after the war and the fact that it was a different synagogue, just in case you were wondering, was it the same shul or not. But if you go to the original shul's website, you can see, I think, all four sides of those two discs and play them. And those records are also in the National Library of Israel. Moving on to London in 1949, there became a vacancy in Dalston Synagogue because Jacob Kusevitsky moved over to the Western Synagogue at that time. And this is a synagogue with a terrific cantorial tradition. And in the choir of that shul, for instance, was Reverend Reuben Turner, the cantorial enthusiast who sadly passed away a few years ago, and also Alan Bilgora, who was a tenor in the London Jewish Male Choir, who made quite a few recordings, and later on was a choir member at Hendon, where cousin Taube moved onto in 1951. The history at Hendon had been that shul was opened in the 1930s. The first incumbent there as cantor was David Kusevitsky. After he left for America, Simon Hass briefly came in. And shortly after that, in 1951, Simon Hass went to Great Portland Street and Shmuel Baruch Taube came to Hendon. And in fact, his incumbency at Hendon caused this Zoom meeting, because at the last Zoom discussion, Zoom presentation about the Feigenblum archive, one of his choir boys suggested, this is David Cohen, so hello to you, David, out there, that it would be great if we could have a presentation on Cantor Taube. So here it is. In London, there were born a further son and a daughter to Cantor Taube and his wife. And hello to the younger son and daughter tonight as well from Israel. We're going to hear some of the London recordings now, which maybe are the best of the Taube recordings which you will ever hear. Some of them were made with the London Jewish Male Choir under the under the baton of Martin White in the 1950s, and some were made under the baton of Jews College cantorial lecturer Chazan Leo Brill. Chazan Leo Brill was the conductor of the Cantor's choir in London. And we're going to see a picture of the Cantor's choir, and we're going to hear the Cantor's choir in action. And that, again, comes from a tape which was kept for 70 years by the Fagenblum family, safe and sound, and was digitized by a Hasidic cantorial enthusiast to whom I couriered the tapes just a year ago. And they revealed this marvelous sound, which we're going to hear tonight. Furthermore, there were found in London in recent times 4 sides, i.e. 2 records, on the Rifanko label, and you're going to hear one side of one of those in a second as well. High quality cantorial recitative material. So let us go straight on to the London recordings. First of all, we're going to have some Chazanot HaRegesh. This is the emotional cantorial art, V'chulim Makablim Aleim, sung in the style of Kvartin, really. I'd listened actually to Kvartin's V'chulim Makablim yesterday just to compare it, and I think we can say in this case that the Taube recording is better. The composition is more interesting than even Kvartin himself here. So here you go. V'chulim Makablim Aleim on the Rifanko label, 1955 approximately. David Levine at the organ. Sorry about that. So, terrific recitative power. Great Zogger, as you would say in the trade. Not only a great Zogger, but a photographic memory for music, a magical sight reader which saved his life in Auschwitz, because whatever music he was given to sing, he could immediately sing it from the manuscript. And not only that, if one watches his Holocaust memoirs, because of the dearth of manuscript material for the performances for the concentration camp guards, sometimes it was necessary for the music to be written down when it was missing. And he was the camp music scribe for this Forstengruber mini orchestra. And his remarkable writing of cantoral recitatives later on in life is attested to by many people who have had recitatives that he had provided for them from recordings or from items that he'd seen or heard. Later on, we're going to see him singing himself just after having mentioned in a speech transcribing one of David Reuteman's pieces. Let us move on. And also, I wanted to say at this point that not only was he a terrific genius in music, and also endowed with a beautiful voice of almost limitless range, that's strong in the baritone range, strong in the high tenor range, uniformly good quality and flexibility. But he was a nice chap. If you speak to his ex-choir boys, they will tell you what a mensch he was, how kind he was. And it doesn't often go together that one is endowed with incredible talents and at the same time retains such humanity. And if one watches also his Holocaust testimony, it's amazingly impressive how eloquent he is with politeness, even in describing people who did not behave in the best of ways. Let's move on quickly now to the Cantor's Choir of London in the 1950s under the baton of Leo Brill. And we're going to hear a piece that hardly anybody takes on, Kodesh Ata by Abras. Abras was a Russian chazan from the, we could say in England, from the Victorian era. And his Kodesh Ata was recorded by Sirota, the famous cantor of Warsaw. So you need a voice and a half to sing it. And here is the Cantor's Choir in London in 1955. That picture is from the concert. And Taube is in the center under the clock in the front row. Maybe we should zoom in on him as well, because you can see all the famous faces of the cantorial scene in London at that time. The baton, slightly on the left of the podium, with a chap with a smart shirt, is Leo Brill himself, the conductor. And if you go to under the clock, you can see the gentleman in the front row, slightly to the left of the center of the clock, is Shmuel Baruch Taube, the fellow with the bushy eyebrows. Next to him, on the left as we look at the photo, is Chazan Schachter. The fellow on the right of him, with the glasses, looking out towards us, is Chazan Skaletsky of Ilford. Then you see Chazan Freilich of Hampstead Garden Suburb. Then you see Chazan Hertzberg of St. John's Wood. And I think next to the podium, after Schechter, going more or less to the center of the photograph, the tallest chap, seems to be Chazan Katanka, who was just about to start in Liverpool at that time. And I won't go on about everyone, but we are working hard on trying to identify every face in the photo. Extreme left is Cantor of Edgware in those days, Jerry Fagan. Right, and on extreme right, you can see the Chazan of Finchley and the Chazan of Willesden, Abram Rosenfeld and Pinchas Fagenblum. And actually, after that, you can see also Chazan Taylor of Dollis Hill. But let us go to the recording of Kodesh Ata. because this is terrific. Choir is good, Chazen's good. Terrific. And the choir boys, who I didn't mention before, include some of the famous cantors of yesteryear who were in the cantors choir. Chazen Roig, who was at the Western. Chazen Haas, who was at Great Portland Street. Chazen Gottlieb, Chazen Domowitz, Chazen Einhorn, smiling also from the page there. So if anybody wants to look at that photo in more detail, I suggest they get in touch with Spencer after the Zoom and make their wishes known. Let us move on to the next phase. 1958 comes, and there's a call to succeed Sholem Katz in Washington. So now is the Chazen of Presidents. and moved to Beth Shalom Synagogue. And in America, he made further recordings, which you may notice the cover of there on the slide. And in fact, the poster for this night's Zoom is based on that photograph there. I painted it all into blue so that you put a nice background without the writing, but it's the same photo. And after 5 years in Washington, moved to Montreal in Canada, to Beth Ora Synagogue. And from 1963 until his decision to retire and move to Israel, he was a lifelong Zionist. He was in Montreal, where, as everywhere, he was greatly respected and loved. So let us move on quickly to Israel. And we're going to hear from the man himself with a picture now, with better quality than the British Pathé News. In 1989, he was asked to speak and sing at the graduation of 40 cantors at the Tel Aviv Cantorial Institute ceremony. And he opened up with a piece by David Voigtman, and then he followed it up with dedicating all those people who occupy themselves faithfully with the wants of the congregation. And he's talking about those who have put in efforts to make the Tel Aviv Cantorial Institute so successful. And he sings at the age of 75 now. So let us let him sing. And on the left-hand side, you can see his grave from 2008 in Rehovot, including his Auschwitz number on the grave. And I've put as my final comment as he sings us out here today, Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his... I hope your Ivrit's good, everybody. He wants to dedicate this prayer, and he's telling us that he doesn't sing Chazonos, he prays Chazonos. Eli Jaffe on the piano. What can you say? It's fantastic. If alle Yiddische Kinder gesagt that they should be able to sing like that at the age of 75. And if one looks into the composition in the Mishaberach mode, bang on, and he's got a nice nigun there, and it's not too long, and it is interesting, and it shows drama. So what else can you ask of a piece of chazanut like that? Right. I think we should open the floor to everybody to speak. Spencer, you can be the ringmaster. I will stop the share.
Yeah. So if you wish to comment or ask a question, please raise your virtual hand, and then you can be unmuted.
I think we should give priority to the immediate families, so because I can see,
of course,
smiling from the page there, numbers of people. And also I want to thank a couple of people who are instrumental in enabling this to happen. First of all, I consulted Raymond Goldstein on day one to say, how can I get in touch with the Taube family? And he said, go to Yechezkel Klang, because he knows them very well. So I went to Yechezkel Klang, and I want to thank him very much for giving me Yona Taube's phone number, because he was a former neighbor of his. And this is actually how this all came about, because whereas we had been researching for the Jolles Encyclopedia, which I must give a piece of support to tonight, and welcome Dr. Jolles, the author of that august work, being a co-editor with him, along with Yehuda Marx, we looked for information to fill the paragraph on Cantor Taube, and now we've got all the direct information from the family. So maybe the Bechayer wants to speak first. So I think we saw Yaakov there in one of the Zoom boxes. So maybe you should have the priority to unmute yourself first. By the way, Spencer, have people got the power to unmute themselves?
I can.
Unmute
Yeah.
yourself.
David, I want to thank you. I want to thank you very much for an amazing presentation. It was, for me personally, it was a lot of very, very moving memories. Of course, I fondly remember our years in London. I know my parents very much appreciated all the help that they received from all their colleagues in London. And I have also a lot of very, very fond memories. I don't know, for some reason I think I lost the picture here. I hope you can still hear me.
We can hear you and see you.
I hear you and see you.
Okay. I got you back. I see a lot of very, very familiar faces, faces that we haven't seen for quite a long time. I want to thank all the people that were involved in this amazing presentation. David, I know we only exchanged a number of emails between us. I hope you appreciate all the photos I sent you.
I do.
This was really a very, very moving presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think before we go to the next family member, maybe we should give the microphone to David Cohen, ex-choir boy. And I'm not allowed to say that he's 80-odd years young, but there we go. David, all yours.
David, it was a remarkable presentation, brought back wonderful memories. I was just, Cousin Taube came to Hendon just before my bar mitzvah, and I stayed in the choir, was one of the very few. We stayed in the choir. In those days, the choir master was Ben Busky. I stayed, and then after Cousin Taube came, a few months later, Ian Blair took over, and we had the most remarkable choir. I was the only boy, and Cousin Taube took me to concerts and gave me the love of music that I have today. I remember we went to Geely concerts, broadcasts, recordings. It was just unbelievable. And I'll tell you one lovely memory, humorous memory.
I think you've got a memory of a Taube child falling in your pond in the garden, no?
I did. And my bar mitzvah, I think it was either Yankala or Yona, actually fell in our fish pond at my bar mitzvah in the garden. But a wonderful memory. Geely came here to sing Verdi's Requiem just before he retired. And every cousin in London was at the Albert Hall to hear him. It was quite magnificent, all with a score. And most of the London Jewish Male Choir were there as well. And I sat with him. And just before the Sanctus, the cousin gave me a bang. And he said, "Stand up, it's Kedusha."
Very nice.
Lovely, lovely memories. And then we saw him in Montreal, and we saw him just before he passed away in his home in Rehovot. So I'm very pleased that I asked you, David, to research it, and I'm delighted with what's come out. So thank you.
Thank you.
So if it's going to you now.
Who's going to speak next?
Brian interested in talking. So it was one of his books that
Yeah.
Did you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Who is it who wishes to speak now?
Raymond,
something, but he's having a little technical problems. So until he gets his act together over there, first of all, I'd like to thank you. This is Ruchi, the youngest. I have fond memories of England, of London, but not very long memories. I was quite young when we left and sadly lost my lovely British accent. This has been an amazing experience. Really, thank you so much, David. This is so moving.
So well done.
And thank you, David. And next time you're in Israel, we'd love to get together with you and
we've got 4 grandchildren, daughters, son-in-law. We're there all the time, so we'll be in touch.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really wonderful. And I just like to tell you one little story that my father told me about Otto Moll from Auschwitz.
Right.
So, as you said, he was a notorious, I don't know, psychopath maybe, but he loved music. And he took my father and Speiser out of the coal mine into the kitchen, and that basically saved his life, saved their lives. But he also said something to my father which gave him a lot of hope. He said to him one day, he said, Taube, watch out for your voice. You're going to need it. And my father said, first of all, he called me by my name, not by my number. So I had an identity. I was a human being. And he talked to me about the future. He said, you're going to need your voice. And that gave me hope. And so, he's probably burning in hell, for which he deserved maybe a couple of degrees lower, thanks to saving my father and his violinist friend. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Because I've just translated my dad's war diaries, and also based on extremely little information, these people were able to discern like a maximum of meaning out of very little hard facts.
Right.
And that's a real example of that.
Saying that.
Nice mute yourself.
So,
It's up to them.
Mordechai Edel, go on. You're waving your hand in Vancouver there.
Right, Mordechai, please come in.
Erev Tov. Or it's probably like midday there.
Okay. So this is so absolutely incredibly fantastic. Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you. And it's just amazing. I'm originally from Birmingham, England. I escaped to Vancouver, I don't know, a few years ago. And my uncle, may he rest in peace, was my hero. He climbed over the wire at Dachau at the end. And he was an opera singer. And he has a parallel story with Ruchis and Chazan Taube. It's just so uncanny. It's a bit, not getting into my story.
And we have to say that Mordechai Edel is a formidable Baal Tefillah and Talmud of Moshe Price.
Yeah.
The great Chazan of pre-war Budapest and later Manchester.
So, philosophically, maybe a little esoteric. I've been thinking a lot lately about, please God, I think what we need in this world is just this humility, humbleness, this essence of zero. Yesh ma'ayin, everything comes from nothing. I mean, and buzzwords keep coming to my mind. Ki hakol aval. Ki hakol aval. And this, to me, when I first came to Canada, I had a singing teacher who gave me a record of Chazan Taube's.
No.
It had a big impact on my thoughts and philosophy.
And you have to press for here because you can't do it from there.
Somebody else is speaking.
That's what it's called.
There's one thought that I'm rambling on here about.
They have to unlock you. Send this.
Please, one at a time.
Send this.
One at a time, please. Mordechai, continue.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. The concept of Ki HaKol.
And you're not on. And this is undone, and you're.
It's so cute.
Okay.
This is Goldstein. This is Raymond Goldstein.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I would just like to say a few words how in debt I was to Chazan Taube as a junior colleague of his at the Tel Aviv Cantorial Institute from 1991 onwards. And he was a tremendous friend, transcriber of hundreds, but really hundreds of recitatives, which we used with.
Can everybody mute themselves except Raymond, please?
I never spent it with you.
Okay. I have in my own collection hundreds of recitatives, second to the famous Noach Shal, I would say. I made mention in the chat, he gave me manuscripts or photocopied manuscripts of pieces by Dobrin. And he said to me that these were, in his view, the finest transcriptions that he had ever seen from, I think, way back in Paris. I stand to correction. When I had to rework the Ribono Sholam by Pinchik for Sira, I used the Dobrin version. It was the only one that was usable because Pinchik, later on in his life, had tried to Taishtum verbessert, and no one can use what was printed. And Chazon Taube had it all written out very well. In addition, he gave me to photocopy a very rare volume, which obviously he could not find. And I have a copy of compositions for cantor and choir, including many compositions that were never ever published. As many of you will know, all the choir masters before the Second World War never had photocopy machines, and they used to fight with each other to get hold of choral compositions. And Taube, in his own taste, had transmitted and had copied down in his handwriting, which was beautiful, quite a number of choral compositions. And to this day, I am using his material. We did a number of concerts together with my friend Gideon Zellermeyer and Queen Juliana many years ago in Herzliya. And a very special thing that I'll never forget would be that on the second night of Rosh Hashanah at the Jerusalem Gate Synagogue, Chazon Taube was always our main chazan, because we have always had the tradition that the cantor and choir will sing in the evening and on the 2 mornings. But the second night, we were never on. And Chazon Taube, the last time that he presented himself, he, I think, was probably, a standard correction, was probably already over 90. It was his last second night performance by us. And I live in the German colony, and it's quite a schlep just to walk backwards and forwards to the Great Synagogue. But Naftali Hirschtig turned around to me and said, "You know what, Raymond? You make a point of walking back tonight. We don't know how many more years. This may be indeed the final time that he will officiate as chazan at the synagogue." And so we schlepped all the way back in the evening, and he delivered a most incredible, magnificent evening service, Ma'ariv service, that anybody that was present will never, ever forget, including his famous Hashkivenu, which he had transcribed, and afterwards I did a big setting of. And he was just absolutely wonderful, because it was a recitative that once you heard it, you never forgot it. And we were always very much in debt to him for everything that he taught us and he did. One little amusing story, this is very, very personal. The famous Malcha, how should I put it, the shopping mall opened up, and the Israel TV were busy filming people walking around. And suddenly, in front of me, I see Chazon Taube and his wife, and they were busy waving like this to the camera, and it was so beautiful, because this is exactly how they were. When I would go to their house in Rehovot, Mrs. Taube immediately produced the biscuits and the coffee and the tea and the cake, and then she was busy waving to everybody, and it was so natural and so wonderful. Probably I'm the only one that paid attention to something like that. May we all just have most wonderful memories of a very special man and a very special woman as well, because behind every man is an important woman, and we'll never forget that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Yona Taube has just put in the chat that he's now available to speak.
Yona,
so Yona, can you come in from wherever you are?
Yeah.
Excuse me, may I say something?
Let
Yona go first.
Let Yona go first.
Okay.
Yona, Mordechai, and then you. Yona, please.
Thank you. You let
Do you
me know.
hear me?
Yes,
Do you hear me?
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
You can. I
I
don't know if
can
you
go?
see me, but you can hear me. Anyway, I would just like, first
Yona.
of all, like to thank you very much, David, for this amazing, very unique presentation, which I really never thought was ever going to be produced so many years after my father passed away. And this is really, like almost bringing him back to life. Just that Mishaberach Aviseinu that he sang in that concert in Tel Aviv, he sang it almost every Shabbos, more or less in the same, variations, different variations. But that was the Mishaberach that I knew. That was the Mishaberach that I knew.
Oui.
Right.
And the memories are really amazing. We remember England, we remember the shul, we remember Washington and the shul, and of course we remember Montreal when we were older, and the people who were there. And my father was always.
Joinele, can we see you?
I would like you to see me, but I don't know exactly what to do about it.
I would like to see you. It's a long time.
Okay. I really don't know what to do about it. But anyway, hearing is almost like seeing. I hope. But the fact that my father said in that concert in Tel Aviv, he said he's not going to sing, he's going to daven, because he was essentially, that's what he was. I remember that towards the end of the time when we were in Montreal, the rabbi, his name was Rabbi Walicki, very fine person, and he talked about my father. It was before he left to Israel in 1975, right? And he said he is our lawyer. He is our defense attorney on Rosh Hashanah when we are standing up for judgment in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And we need a lawyer, and he is our lawyer, and he was the one who's presenting our case in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And that's how the Rabbi Walicki saw him, because that's how he saw himself. And that's really what the Chazan is all about, a shliach tzibur, to represent the tzibur in front of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the message that we got from him. And Baruch Hashem, we were zocha. And I have a son who is even a pretty decent chazan, even though he's not professional. He doesn't do it for a living, but he does a good job. And
you sent me the recording of your son at a wedding.
You heard the recording?
You sent me. You sent me.
Yeah, it was very good. Like he sang the Birkat Kohanim that that my father always used to sing at the simchas that we had. So he sang that in exactly note for note. He sang the Birkat Kohanim of my father.
That's the third generation.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Okay,
I think
thank you very much.
Or third on third. Many generations. Okay. So who was speaking from? Was it from Paris?
Let Mordechai finish what he was saying.
Okay, Mordechai, go on.
Thank you. Maybe Raymond, maybe you remember many moons ago, I don't know, 1973. Anyway, if you have your piano there, related to my punchline question that was maybe philosophically, esoterically related to Ki Hakol Havel, everything comes from nothing. And to my ear, pardon me, the cousin sings into sings right into the technique that is maybe comes from European, from Viennese or German teaching, but then Gewalt, he opened up into the because his Palan is right in the mass, and then suddenly and it's on a geschrei on the top. This was like a beautiful open flower on I think it was an E flat.
Yeah.
Well, it was a superb technique which enabled him to sing till the very end of his days. As I say, the man was well over 90 when he officiated the last time, and he was an absolute magnificent voice. Everybody said that very night.
Raymond,
I'd like to mention.
Yes, would you like to come in now, please? Is it?
May I say a few words?
Yes.
I'm inviting you to speak now.
Is it okay for me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I will be very short. First, I thank you so much for this unbelievable presentation. It is for me very, very moving, as I am cousin Taube niece. I am the daughter of his sister, and I see hereby all my cousins from Israel, from England, and it's very moving. But I want to tell a special story about Auschwitz that perhaps my family does not know. When I had a close friend in Antwerp, and she told me that her uncle was in Auschwitz and he was in a bad shape. And he said to my friend that fortunately on his way he met a chazan. And this chazan saved some food every day for him. And he said that probably it saved his life. This man was called Arnold. I knew him because he was very often to my friend. And my friend told her, I don't know why, but I know that my friend, me, had her uncle was a chazan and he was in Auschwitz. And when Uncle Ben, that I call him, when he came to Antwerp to visit his father, I saw my friends and we made the combination, and the two men met after years, and it was so moving. So I want to express this because everybody here speaks about his voice because this is the purpose of this evening. But I speak of the man, of the brother of my mother, how she loved him, how he was in our family, how the family loved him, how there was so much love with his brother and sister, with his parents. And this I want to speak about, because this has to be known. He and not only him, I could never speak about him if not speaking about my Aunt Yoli, Judith. If he made this career, she is not for nothing. She was an unbelievable person. And this also needs to be heard. This is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. David, could
Thank you. Thank you from the family.
Can we say something?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
All right. Well, first of all, David, this has been the most amazing presentation.
Yes.
Amazing. And it's so wonderful to see all the cousins here, and hello to everyone. Sending love. Yeah, I feel very emotional about it because nobody was more beautiful home to go and visit, and there's always great food. I always remember a beautiful cold peach soup that Auntie Yoli made, and never tasted anything like it.
I had her receipts still.
Yes.
I do some cakes from her.
Yes, and so anyway, look, Raymond's going to say a few words, but I just wanted to say, sending love, how proud we are that we're a member of this family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just explain to people. You are from the grandchildren of the brother who was on the Kinder transport to Manchester.
Absolutely.
Correct. My father, Michael, he left in 38 on the Kinder transport. He shouldn't have really been on it, but that's another story. But he got out of Vienna in 38. I'll tell a little story when I got bar mitzvahed. I got bar mitzvahed in March 1962. And at the time, we had very deep snow. It must have been perhaps 3 foot deep, the snow. And we're walking to shul. We left very early because we were concerned we may not get there. So we left the house at 8:30. Shul, in those days, you start at 9:15. We're walking to shul, and my father and mother, she's saying, well, don't know what sort of a mitzvah it's going to be. If we're having trouble getting to shul, there won't be many people in shul. Anyway, we get to shul about 9:10. They're queuing up to get into the shul. Word had got out that my Uncle Bernard, the Chazan, and my other uncle, Uncle Eli, from France, who was a jeweler, not a Chazan, but also had a remarkable voice. And they came from miles around for a free concert. So there's a young 13-year-old having his bar mitzvah, nervous as hell, on the bimmer, doing his bar mitzvah, millions of eyes staring at me. And what a wonderful bar mitzvah they gave me. Unbelievable. We'd never seen the shul so busy.
So did they both daven, or did who davened Musaf and who davened Shachris?
They did it between the two of them.
Fantastic.
My Uncle Ali
this
also
is
had a
Heaton Park.
Voice.
You know, Raymond.
Heaton Park Shul, yes.
When your father, when Chazan Taube came to the bat mitzvah of our daughter, we were very proud, and he was singing. We didn't know before. He was quite older, and we didn't know if he could sing, but he could. And it was, all the people could not imagine this. And when it was finished, there was a big silence. Nobody could talk. And the guy who made the music for kids, for young, he came to me and he said, "You didn't tell me that. What can I do now? What shall I do? I cannot play music anymore. Your uncle is unbelievable."
So, Yona, did I see that you wanted to say some more? Now we can see your face.
About that Rosh Hashanah davening that Raymond mentioned, one of my sons, Nichoel, was in yeshiva in Yerushalayim at the time. I don't live in Yerushalayim, so I couldn't go and hear him. I just knew he used to daven there, but I never heard him, and I didn't really know how it came out. And one of my sons was in yeshiva in Yerushalayim at the time, and he walked over to the shul, and he heard him davening. He came on with this amazing report about how my father davened at his age, as you say, as Raymond said, he was over 90. And he had, and this was amazing davening on the night of Rosh Hashanah, the second night of Rosh Hashanah. So I got a first-hand report from my son about it, even though I wasn't able to be there myself. But I was really, I was really amazed.
Thank you.
David, I'd just like to show you something, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
This, my father, Raymond mentioned that he wrote music. I don't know if you can see it in the camera.
Yes.
They hold it here. Can you? It's blurred.
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Go off. I don't know if you can see this very well.
It's a bit faint.
This is his notebook. You can see it's a notebook. I think right here, it's here. You can kind of see it. Like
yes,
that.
We can see it now.
Yeah, now we can see it.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful hand. This is Sim Shalom.
It is.
And you can see how beautiful his hand is. Very, very precise. He was always looking for the perfect pen because he wrote a lot. I'm sorry, you can't see it very well. I'll send you some pictures, David, if you like. I'll take some pictures of it. But Raymond would probably appreciate this very much, and some of the other speakers. This is what he went up to the Amud with. He went up with this and his tuning fork.
Yeah.
And this is what he had. He had like these notes. Every tefillah in the davening he had in here for himself, and he went up with this.
Maybe when we put this on YouTube, you could put some of those pages on the comments afterwards for people.
With pleasure. With pleasure.
And I saw we had in the audience Malcolm Bremer, who remembers him from Hendon with his tuning fork.
Absolutely. I mean, my specific memory, because I grew up in Varley Close, and I used to go as a young child every Shabbos to hear him daven. And when the late Reverend Hartman, Zifrona Levacha, was giving his sermon, the one thing you could guarantee is that Chazan Taube would not be listening to the sermon. He would be sitting in his seat at the front of the shul, turning over pages of music, his tuning fork going to his teeth, which is how he always took his note, and was actually listening to himself singing, and out loud, or to him out loud. He was just turning pages of music like most people turn the pages of a newspaper.
Fantastic.
Now,
there's another story from Hendon from those days.
Well, there is. If I may, I was a very close friend of the late Alan Bilgora, who was in turn close with him. Now, Alan got to know him in slightly unusual circumstances, in that Alan was a singer. His mother, who played the piano for him, had gone out to buy some music for him, and was sitting on a bus. She started turning the pages of the music and became aware there was a gentleman sitting behind, alongside, I'm not sure which now, who, as she was turning the pages, was just singing absolutely perfectly everything that she turned. She turned to him. He spoke no or very little English. They communicated in Yiddish. She brought him home, introduced him to Alan, and thus began a lifelong relationship. One of the stories, if I may turn briefly to the Auschwitz days, one of the stories he told Alan was of a tragic day when a number of people were hanged and they all had to stand there and watch. That evening, everybody very depressed with what they'd seen, he burst into song in German, the English of which is "Friends, Life is Worth Living," from an operetta. And it was a memory he conveyed to Alan, and Alan passed on to me, which showed the personality of the man, as well as his extraordinary ability to sing from sight anything placed in front of him.
Thank you very much. In fact, David told me that Mr. Blair came up with a new composition for, I think, the Caduceus in Musaf. And during the Haftorah, I suppose, Chazan Taube went up to the choir gallery and looked over this music, and the choir master said, "Would you like a copy?" He said, "No, I've already memorized it." And he sang it perfectly.
That's how it was.
I'm going to give the final word to Alex in a moment. But I'm sure you've got a lot of recordings which you couldn't play tonight because of the constraints of time. Is there any way, if they're not digitized, we can digitize them and put them on?
I've digitized all of them now. So anybody who wants them can have them.
We'll put them on separately. Okay. Alex, would you like the final word?
Thank you, Spencer. David, unbelievable program, because I remember also Chazan Taube in Hendon when I was a very young boy, and so magnificent. When I moved up to Manchester, I don't know whether Raymond will remember this, but I used to speak to Michael when somebody told me he was the brother of Chazan Taube, and we, because I was involved with Chazonas, he was in the fur business and I was in that business many years ago. We used to speak to Raymond's dad, and we had many conversations. I wish I would have recorded these stories and these conversations, but it would be nice, Raymond, if you have, family stories, that maybe you could put them onto tape or record them for us, because it's so important to keep the legacy of the family and people of that generation with us forever. And it's so important. So if you can do that, Raymond, be so appreciative. I don't know if you remember me from way back when, but I remember your dad very, very fondly.
Excuse me, do you think it is possible to get a replay from this presentation?
Yes, it's being recorded.
Spencer records all these in the series. So
I just saw on the screen Benny Meissner in Toronto. Maybe we could squeeze a comment in from him, because he knew two Chazonim neighbours in Canada would have known each other. Of
course.
Benny, are you there?
Benny, are you still there? No.
No, he's gone.
Afraid not. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank David for his in-depth research about Cantor Samuel B. Taube and for bringing to our attention the extent and quality of his output. I hope it stimulates your interest in his work and that you seek out some of his other recordings. May I remind you that recorded past sessions are on our Edgeware US YouTube channel, and this session will be added shortly on YouTube. Thank you very much for attending this session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have around 25 Chazanot long recordings on our Edgware United Synagogue YouTube channel, and most of them are put together under the Cantor music.
There's also some recordings on the European Cantors Association YouTube channel, also of presentations and things that we have done for the Cantors Assembly and for Edgware Education. And I must thank Spencer personally for all the hard work he does in keeping this going, and he is a stalwart and very knowledgeable about Chazonas. And, you know, we really appreciate having someone like Spencer, and also for David Prager, you know, my colleague and dear friend. Thank you so much for putting these programs together. You give people so much pleasure and bring so many people together. Maybe they haven't seen each other for a few years, but what a mitzvah you are doing. Thank you.
And if anyone else wants to do a presentation, please contact me.